The northern part of Australia is incredibly vast, with a lot of places to explore. With ancient rock art and trees thousands of years old. We had highs and lows. We visited some awe-inspiring places. We go sailing on an inland sea. And hit some flat spots. Join us as we explore northwestern Australia. We left Katherine early in the morning and headed out towards the West Australian border. We took a break near the Noelbinbin Walk. It was incredibly hot, and as the trail had some steep rocky climbs and is just short of 2 kilometres, we decided to fly the drone instead. It looks like a magical place though, one we definitely plan on coming back to. We were very happy to be back in the truck with aircon. The Victoria River runs alongside the road. We came across this bridge and decided to have a look around. On the far side of the bridge are large lock gates. They lead to the Bradshaw military area. We were chatting to some people there and they suggested backtracking a bit to a camping area in the Gregory National Park. It was a bit further off the road than we planned, but it sounded great. We came across a sign that said Calcite Flow, so we decided to take a look. From a distance it appears to be a waterfall, but it is actually cascading limestone solidified over thousands of years. From there, the track deteriorated significantly. It was following a creek bed for a lot of the way, very slow going. Late in the afternoon, we arrived at Drover's Rest Campground. We were the only ones there. Ian flew the drone to have a look at the landscape. It is incredibly varied, with so much to explore. We left the following day, knowing that we would be back to spend some time here. Ancient boab trees are a feature of this part of the world. It's incredible to think that your entire lifespan is just a moment in time for these wonders. We got back onto the highway and continued our journey. Our next stop was Keep River National Park, just before the Western Australian border. There are 2 campgrounds. We chose the furthest one. Once again, we were the only people there. It was incredibly peaceful. That evening at sunset, Ian sent up the drone to have a look around. The landscape was incredible, with large plains surrounded by rocky outcrops that appeared to have been pushed up out of the earth. We decided to do some of the walks from the campground. Even though it was early, it was very hot and just got hotter as the day wore on. The rocky formations are similar to the Bungle Bungles, although much smaller. The track was around 6.5 kilometres long and wound through floodplains lined with palm trees. We left the campground the next morning, and on our way back to the highway, we stopped to do the Ennamoon walk. There were some fantastic examples of rock art, but we didn't explore much as it looked like there had been some recent rock falls. About 10 kilometres past the Western Australia border is the turn-off to Lake Argyle. It is the second largest lake in Australia and was created by damming the Ord River. The dam also has a hydro power station that provides electricity to the area. We were lucky enough to get some places on a sunset cruise. It was great to be able to relax on the boat. I would highly recommend it if you get the chance. The boat stopped a few times so we could cool off in the water, and then made its way back as the sun was setting. The next day we drove to Kananara, where we met up with some friends, and together headed out to Parry's Lagoon. From there, we decided to take the backtrack to Wyndam. It seemed like a good option on the map. It was a lot more rugged than we expected. The track was difficult to find in some places, so we relied on HEMA maps and wheel tracks for direction. It was slow going. Ian saw some wheel tracks on the salt pan, and he thought it would be quicker than driving on the rough track. Turns out, he was wrong. We didn't get very far in before we sunk. He put the truck into four-wheel drive and locked the diffs. After a couple of goes, we got out. Luckily, we were able to get out relatively easily. I must admit, I was having visions of us covered in mud digging. The track got rougher with a lot of boggy areas. We had to find a way through some huge washouts. The road had washed out on either side, but we managed to squeeze through. This jump up was over a metre high. The track was washed away here with a narrow bypass. We had no choice other than to push through the trees. We eventually made it to Wyndam, where we met up with our friends again. We decided to go to Muchalabra Dam to have some lunch and a look around. It was amazing. We climbed up to some cave areas where there was some more fantastic ancient rock art. We had booked into Diggers Rest Station and spent the night on the banks of the King River. It was absolutely beautiful. We spent the evening by the fire chatting. From Diggers Rest Station, we decided to take the Kurungi track to the Gibb River Road. Seeing that sign made us wonder what we were in for. Turns out it was a much better track than the back track. We were enjoying the drive when suddenly the tyre pressure monitor alarm went off. We had a puncture. The sidewall of the tyre had split, so we put on the spare. That night we patched the tyre, but decided to change our plans. So instead of doing the Gibb River Road, we would head towards Broome on the highway to get a new tyre. The Bungle Bungles were on the way. We had always wanted to go there, so decided to risk it. It was quite a long drive in, and the road was pretty rough in places. It was a lovely area though, with a diverse landscape. There were places where the road was very windy and narrow. We just took it nice and easy. The tour buses, on the other hand, obviously felt more comfortable driving faster. These buses cater to people who stay in the caravan park at the entrance to the park. We saw these guys pulled over and stopped to see if they were okay.
You guys alright? Okay, thank you. No worries.
Cars and buses are not the only road hazards. You have to watch for people stopping to take photos. This was the lookout for the magnificent elephant rocks. We arrived at the campsite and set ourselves up. We made a coffee and climbed to the vantage point to watch as the sun lit up the mountains at sunset. We got up before sunrise the next morning and drove the 30 kilometers to the Bungle Bungles in the dark. We wanted to be there early to beat the crowds. We arrived just as the sun was coming up. We hiked through Cathedral Gorge to the amphitheatre at the end. The cavern is enormous, carved out by millions of years of water erosion during the wet season. We had got our timing right. There was nobody there. A perfect time to do some photographs. You have to wonder just how that enormous amount of rock stays standing up. After spending some time in the amphitheatre, we continued our walk. The rock formations are amazing and varied. Part of the walk passes through honeycomb rocks. We were lucky enough to have visited when flying the drone was still allowed. The laws changed in 2018, however, so now they are banned. We continued our walk following the riverbed. As it was still early and nobody else was around, we took the opportunity to do some more photos. When we got to the window, we were able to spend a little time enjoying the beauty of the place before the tour group started to arrive. The mounds are incredible and are a beehive shape with stripes. This is because the layers rich in iron develop a rust red colour. The layers richer in clay hold water and become home to blue-green algae. When it rains, the darker layers become a shiny deep green colour, but during the dry, they are a more grey colour. While the layers run through the mound, The colours are only visible on the surface. Beneath them, it is pale sandstone. It was getting close to midday and was incredibly hot, so we packed up and headed back to the truck. We got back to the car park, and while I was chatting to the rangers, Ian decided on one more flight over these incredible formations. We left Cathedral Gorge and drove to Many Palms. It was a tight squeeze through some places. Between tour groups we were alone and able to take some more amazing photos. The next morning we packed up early and drove to Echidna Chasm. Around midday it gets very crowded as the sun pours through the gorge, lighting it up. It was a pity to miss it, but we prefer experiencing the magic of these places in peace and quiet. It was time to leave this beautiful place and head back towards Broome to organise a new tyre. Although still rough, the drive was a little easier this time as we knew what to expect. We got back onto the asphalt road and settled in for the drive. We were looking forward to getting to the ocean again. We were 50 kilometres past Halls Creek when the tyre pressure alarm went off. Ian pulled over to see what was happening. The tyre on the other side had a sidewall split. The split on this one was not as big as the other one. It was incredibly hot. Ian decided to patch it and put in a tube so we could get back to Halls Creek. We managed to organise some new tyres, but they could only be sent to Kananara, around 400 kilometres away. We knew we needed to put as little stress as possible on the tyre, so we drove through the night. It was a lot cooler, and because there was no traffic, we could drive slowly. It took us most of the night. We arrived in Kananara early the next morning. The tyres were being sent from Perth. We were stuck in the caravan park without much to do, so we got the boat out and spent a lot of time exploring Lily Creek Lagoon and Lake Kununurra. There is a lot of wildlife around, from nesting and fishing birds to the local freshwater croc. There are a lot of dead trees in the lagoon. They were a perfect backdrop for photos. Finally, after a week, our tyres arrived. We were extremely happy to be able to carry on exploring this beautiful country. Thanks for watching. Please don't forget to like and subscribe.